Hi everyone, I'm Tovah and thanks so much for tuning in. Today, super excited, hit my first new YouTuber milestone, 100 subscribers. So thank you so much to everyone who's already subscribed, and if you're watching my channel and you haven't subscribed yet, please click the subscribe button and also click the bell to get notified every time there's a new video. So let's get ready to celebrate. So today, in celebrating my first 100 subscribers, we're going to be learning how to properly do a sun salutation. So I'm going to break down the finer points of chaturanga, upward dog or cobra, and downward dog. And don't worry, if those terms all sound Greek to you, I'll make it super easy. This will be great for anybody that's a beginner, or even somebody who's maybe a little bit more advanced who's just looking for a good tutorial to make sure that they're doing these postures correctly. So first thing we're going to look at is how to properly do chaturanga. And oftentimes people go too low and they risk injuring their shoulder, or potentially they don't have the strength to do a good chaturanga from their toes and they really should be going from their knees. So if I start at the top of my push-up position, you want to come down in chaturanga so that basically you're parallel when you look at your body from the mat. So I'm going to push back up there. So what happens with lots of people is they go way too low and they come past that parallel position, so where your body is flat with the rest of their arm. And when you do that, it causes a lot of potential damage at the front of the shoulder girdle. And if you can imagine, if you're doing, say, a power flow class and you're doing a bunch of sun salutations day over day and you're letting yourself go too low, that can be really problematic. So I've showed you what it looks like correctly. I'm going to go to that correct position, and then I'm going to go a little further and show you what it looks like if you're not doing it properly. And a good way that you can check this out for yourself is set up your camera and take a quick video, and then you'll know. So if you come down, here's where we want to be. Here's where lots of people go to. So that's the position that we want to try to avoid. What also happens with chaturanga is that if you don't have the strength to lower your body as one unit, you get that real wave or arch or wiggle worm in your back. So if that's happening to you, what I would suggest is come down to your knees and then work on coming to that position, okay? So that will help you build your strength to have a better chaturanga. Another thing that you can do is you can set up your block in front of you, and you could use that as a guide to make sure that your shoulder doesn't go any lower than that. So if I put my block here, I'm going to come down, boom, that's my position. So a couple of different tricks for those that are working on chaturanga. And remember, if you're not doing upward facing dog, we really don't need to stop in chaturanga. We would be doing that lower from the push-up all the way to the ground. So let's see what that looks like. So phase 2 of sun salutation is going to be our back bend. So we'll start with the easier version. So we lower all the way down. We still elbows wrap by our sides, but we come right to the floor. And that's the difference. When we come all the way down, we're not leaving pressure in our shoulder, so it's okay. So from here, I'll use the word basic, but really this is a fantastic option for anyone. It's not a lesser pose, it's just a different pose. But it is easier to do because you don't require as much strength. So when we look at cobra, you want to take a nice gentle back bend, stretch back with your toes, pull your heart forward, lift your chin and lift your eyes. But when you're here, you want to make sure you can lift your hands off the ground. So I'm using the muscles in my back to do the lift. I'm not driving the lift through my arms because that can cause a lot more bad compression through the lower back. So a little bit of compression back there can be helpful if, say, we're doing a yin yoga practice, but in flow yoga, we want to keep everything moving and nice and loose. So gentle back bend, keeping the bottom ribs down on your mat. So your ribs are down, your hips are down, and you'll know that you're in a good place here if your hands can be nice and light. And of course, we want to pull those shoulders down towards our buttocks. So that would be our cobra. We lift, we inhale, and then we exhale all the way down. If you're looking or thinking about adding upward dog to your practice, the first step is to make sure that you have a really strong chaturanga. So if we go back up the video and practice your chaturanga and you're having a hard time holding yourself or stopping in that parallel arm position, or you just know that you're really not that good at push-ups from your toes, I would skip upward dog and stick with cobra. Reason being, if you can't string together a couple of good push-ups from your toes, you really don't have the upper body strength to do a strong upward dog, and it is a posture that can cause a lot of injuries to yogis just for that reason. So what happens is they don't have the upper body strength, they're really sloppy in the upward facing dog, and they get a lot of compression in the lower back, and that's where the injury happens. So instead of taking a posture, a back bend, that's really meant to stretch and open up through the back muscles and release tension, you could end up doing the opposite, and then of course resulting in an injury, which would be really not fantastic for you. So let's take a look at what it looks like, but definitely be really strict with yourself and ask yourself if this is something that your body is ready for today. And if it's not ready today, that doesn't mean that you can't work towards it, practicing lifting and lowering from your knees as you build your upper body strength. Start to interject in your sun salutations, sometimes lowering from your knees and pressing from your knees, and sometimes lifting and lowering from your toes until you get to the place that you can do it from your toes all the time. And of course, if you are somebody who does have a little bit of a sensitive lower back to begin with, I would always stick with cobra just to err on the side of caution. So let's see what that upward dog looks like, should this be part of your practice. And if it's not, you can just go through and practice a few more lower downs and get your cobra perfect. So when we do upward facing dog, we want to come to that perfect chaturanga position. We turn the toes under, and then from there, we pull our chest forward, lifting our eyes and our chin. So it's only the tops of our toes and our hands that are touching the ground. Your hips should not be on the floor here, and you should not be slouching in this position. So here's where that strength comes in. You really push through the floor, lifting all the way along, reaching your toes back, and then from there you would turn over your toes and press back straight to downward facing dog. So that transition is important because it's going to be a little bit different from cobra compared to upward dog. So if you're in cobra, you're going to inhale, lift. You're going to exhale, let yourself fold all the way down, and then either from your knees or from your toes, you're going to lift and press back to downward facing dog. If you're going from upward dog, you're going to lower to chaturanga. You're going to press through really strong upward facing dog, and then right from there, you're going to use your core muscles to pull yourself up and back. Everybody's with me so far? Okay, so now we're moving on to downward dog. Maybe one of the quintessential poses in yoga. Everybody knows it, but a lot of people really don't optimize their downward facing dog. So what you want to think about in downward dog is getting yourself into the best position. Your hands and your legs are about shoulder width apart, and you can always test. So come into the up of a push-up, and then press back to downward dog from there. You really shouldn't need to move your feet or your hands from that position. If you're moving them in, you're probably a little bit too close together. So in this position, I want to spread my fingers really wide, making sure that I'm pushing all of my knuckles into the mat, especially watching your first finger and your thumb. So if they're peeling off the ground, you can be getting a lot of extra strain through the wrist, which isn't good. And we don't want to be really forward in our downward dog. So if you're feeling like there's a lot of pressure in my wrists and this hurts, it means that you don't have your pressure far enough back. You need to shift your weight further back. So we should have more weight in our feet than we do in our hands in downward dog. Now bend your knees a little bit more than you think you need to. Then really tip your hips up to the roof. So that will give you the room in your lower back and in your pelvis to make the tip happen. Especially if you're a little bit tight, if you try to do it with really straight legs, your hips won't have the movement to be able to get your buttocks tipped high to the roof. Then from there, then straighten your legs as much as they'll comfortably go, but don't force them back down because that can just cause that round in your back to go the opposite way. So we want to keep that nice hip tip and see how that really lengthens out my back and flattens out my shoulders. If I try to push my heels all the way down, what can happen is I end up in a bit of a rounding by my shoulders and rounding by my back. And that's not the position that we want to be in. So we want to just add that gentle bend, tip our hips, like you're pushing your tummy back to sit on your lower thighs, or upper thighs rather. And then your neck should be nice and long. So your ear should touch your arm bone if you tip it to the side. Okay, so take a break for a second here. So when we look at the downward dog position, you only want to straighten your legs as much as you comfortably can once you get that good tilted hip position. The key thing to remember though is keeping the knees a little bit soft is always a little bit gentler for your hamstrings and your lower back. So if you're new to yoga, or you know that you're not a super flexible yogi, which there's lots of yogis out there that are not super flexible, and that's why we do yoga, is to get more flexible. I'm one of those yogis. I'm not super flexible. So you want to make sure that you soften your knees and you keep them as soft as you like. A little more soft is always better than going towards too straight. The other thing to keep in mind is if we keep our knees a little bit more bent in downward facing dog, you're going to get a little bit more of a stretch across your fascia. So what your fascia is it's really like the outside of a sausage casing. And it's this interconnected tissue or web of cells that all intertwines and it wraps around all the tissues in our body. And when that gets tight, that's what causes the majority of our tension. So in reality, what we're really trying to loosen off is our fascial tissue. So when we bend our knees more in downward facing dog, that will give you a better stretch across the whole back fascia line. So really the fascia that's running from the back of your heels all the way up your back to the back of your head. When you do downward dog and you straighten your legs a little bit more, you're going to feel a little stronger stretch through your hamstrings, so the back of your thighs, but you're not going to get quite as big of a stretch in terms of stretching that whole fascial line. So you may decide to do a little bit of both in your practice, but definitely don't sidestep the soft bend in the knee, because when our main goal is to release that tension in our fascia, I think I would rather take a bigger fascial release, still stretching my hamstrings, as opposed to just targeting my hamstrings and not getting as much fascia involved. But that's my 2 cents. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through a couple of sun salutations, put it all together to make sure you've got it. And definitely don't be afraid to replay this video, go back and practice, and segment it yourself. Say, okay, I'm just going to spend a few minutes today working on my chataranga. Then I'm going to spend a few minutes working on my cobra or my upward dog. And then I'm going to spend a few minutes working on my downward dog. And then slowly over time, just putting it all together and making the whole thing look fantastic. All right, so let's stand up. You're going to come to the top of your mat. We'll start with our hands at our heart. Perfect. You're going to release the palms. Inhale, take a big sweeping breath up. And then exhale, soften your knees as you let yourself bow forward, reaching towards the floor. And you only reach as far as you comfortably can. So if you're not as flexible, you might have your hands mid-thighs or knees. If you're a little more flexible, you might have your hands down to the floor. Then from wherever you are here, you're going to lift up a little bit higher. So if your hands are on the floor, it might just be to fingertips. If your hands are on your shins, it might come halfway up the shins. And if they're on your shins, you're going to come up to your knees. Okay, so you notice how it's just changing, making my back a little bit flatter. You look forward, eyes looking just in front of you, pull the collarbones back. Reach for the floor. Here's where you step or hop back into a plank or a high push-up. Then you're going to lower yourself down. If you're doing cobra, you're coming all the way down. If you're doing upward dog, you're stopping at chaturanga. Good, you're going to inhale, shine your heart ahead, reach your toes back in both positions. Release, and you're pressing from flat if you're in cobra, or you're pressing straight up if you're in upward facing dog, as we go up and back to downward facing dog. Perfect, look to your hands. Inhale, hop or step there. And then exhale, fold, lengthen your back, relax here. Give your head and neck a little shake. Then you're going to inhale to come up, but try to think about eyes up, chest up. So if we lift with a flat spine here, neutral back, that's way better than rolling and rounding up in terms of spinal health long term. So we lift to come all the way up and energize. Good, let's go through that series again. Swan dive, fold down, soften your knees. Bow your head. Inhale, lifting, looking just forward. Reach for your mat, stepping back. Lowering down to whichever level you need. This time I'll do upward dog. Roll over your toes, pressing to upward dog or cobra, and then releasing. So either you're going all the way down to your mat and press back to downward dog, or you push over the toes and you press back to downward facing dog. Remember to spread your fingers wide, tip your bum way to the roof, and then straighten your legs as much as feels good. Look to your hands, step up there or hop up. Relax your back, lower your head. Inhale, flat back. Come all the way up, eyes up, chest up. And let's do one more round. Folding forward. Reaching down, soft knees. Inhale, lengthen your back. Exhale as you reach for the floor, step back, and keep exhaling as you lower. Elbows wrap the ribs in both positions as you press into a back bend. Release and press to downward facing dog. Draw your belly button in and up towards your heart. Look to your hands, hopper step there. Relax your back, lower your head. And inhale, take a big energizing breath. Come all the way to the top. Bring your hands down to your heart. And that's how you do a really good sun salutation. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks again for subscribing and helping me get my first 100 subscribers. My next big milestone is 500 subscribers. So tell your friends, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Don't forget to click that bell to get notified when there's a new video. And if you're interested, just hang around for the next couple seconds. You'll see that there's going to be another video linked for you to check out. Have a wonderful day. Namaste.